involved too. So this is the last time we're going to have an event until next fall. So I'm really glad you're here. Let's give them a very warm welcome.
It all began when I was born in San Jose, California. Do not give a dummy a mic. Welcome to Oxnard College, to a presentation of Sigma Kappa Delta here at Oxnard College. Sigma Kappa Delta is an honor society for two-year colleges in English Honor Society. We at Oxnard College are the Gamma Epsilon chapter, and the students behind me today will be doing a combination of analysis and a dramatic rendering of Samuel Beckett's Waiting for Godot. The students that are behind me and that are behind the partition, these are some very special students. They're the kind of students that you don't have to ask them, you don't have to tell them, you don't have to cajole them. They just step up. They just step up and they make things happen. They go the extra mile, they make the effort. I would say they take the initiative. They take the initiative in life, and they do so not for a paycheck, not for accolades, not for honors, but because it is in their nature to be extraordinary. I'll repeat that. For students like this, like these students, it is simply in their nature to be extraordinary, to be people of commitment. I promise you that for the entirety of their lives, they'll be doing things just like this. This is just the very beginning for these rare individuals. Wherever you find them, university, graduate school, their career worlds, they'll always be doing twice the work. Same paycheck, twice the work, twice the contribution. And they'll never ask for anything in return except for the satisfaction of working together and making a difference for the better, making an impact. Every year we do a presentation like this that celebrates literature. Most of the students who have been in my class understand that literature has the ability to change lives. Students come to class, they get involved in discussions, and they leave the door of that classroom different people than when they walked in. I can't imagine much that's more powerful in life than the power of literature. You walk in the door one person, you read the words on the page, have a discussion, and walk out modified. It's miraculous, and that's not an overstatement. What's going to happen today is not just a discussion of great literature, it's going to be an act that brings literature to life. So we're going to bring literature to life in a very dynamic way. We have some honored guests from Middle Base, Ventura County. You raise your hand. Thank you very much. This is an emotional moment for me personally, because a few of these students are progressing, they're moving on, which is what you want, right? You want your people to move on and do great things, but it's a real paradox. You know them in my classroom, classes that meet at 6:30 in the morning, at dawn. I've had the pleasure of being in their company, but I'm much more excited like a parent of seeing them move on to do great things and fulfill their destiny, which they have, which is waiting for them. Let me do some introductions and make some brief announcements, and then we'll get right to it. On my left, we have Francisco Ferreira, who is the current president of Sigma Kappa Delta, and we have Betsy Valencia. Now, Francisco is going on, I believe, to San Francisco State to major in English. No, he's going to... I'm allowing him to major in business, so he's going to do that. Betsy, with two S's, is picking. She's choosing right now. Everyone's courting her, and she has it down to UC Berkeley and UCLA, which are... Rebecca is going to be in leadership next year, pronta, and then right to her right, we have Patricia Arcero. So this is our lineup here. Behind the curtain, we also have Eric Serra, and we have Alba Craig. And let's see if I've missed any announcements here. I think that's good. Take some time here and enjoy the time that we have together. It's final exam time, so people are stressed out. they're worried. Stop that. Stop worrying. Stop stressing. It will not do you any good if you get nervous. I say it every semester. I mark up my students every day and say the same thing. Start enjoying the pressure. The pressure's not going to go away. You just get better at handling it, and the better you get at dealing with it, the greater your contribution. You'll just spread the love, you'll spread the wisdom, you'll spread the knowledge, and make this world a better place. So learn now to negotiate, to embrace, to enjoy the struggle, because the struggle is beautiful. Welcome to our presentation.
What am I, child labor over here? You're supposed to introduce me. Oh,
This is Francisco.
that's my dad.
Crazy.
All right, so thank you for the introduction, Profe. Thank you for the kind and inspirational words. And most importantly, thank you for advising us and being a mentor to me specifically for these past couple years. Yeah, it's been years. I've counted. I'm sorry I'm not an English major. Maybe in an alternate universe I am, but anyway, here I am. Thank you for you guys all for coming. I know we've got finals around the corner, so we really appreciate you guys coming in and hanging out with us today. And I say hanging out with us because not only are we imparting words onto you, but the purpose of this event is to encourage discussion and original thought. So one of the themes Sigma Kappa Delta tries to, or one of the things we've been touching on throughout the semester is the concept of truth, specifically an absolute truth with a capital T as opposed to a subjective truth with a lowercase t. So for the most part, our group is really receptive to new ideas, and we invite you to share your perspective with us, and not only that, but to challenge our perspectives with respect, of course. So for those who aren't familiar with our group, we're the Oxnard College chapter of Sigma Kappa Delta. We're a nationwide organization for two-year colleges. We've put on events in the past, like open mic nights, and we've gone to schools and we've talked to children, and we put on these presentations, which is like a literary analysis. So the point we're trying to embody with this is just a sense of collaboration and creation. We're here at a community college, so we really try to embody that community and say, hey, we're here, and college is more about the academic part, the class part. It's about extracurriculars and meeting people and coming up with ideas that you might not have come up with on your own. So yeah, that's pretty much what we're trying to embody. That's what we're doing with this. And hopefully you guys can take that with you. This is an absurdist play. Betsy will go further in detail, but yeah, that's the spirit of it. It's just pretty much collaboration, creation, camaraderie, and all those wonderful things. So thank you, welcome, and I'm going to have Betsy give a little bit of context on what we'll be talking about today.
Can you hear me? Okay, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about the writer. So Samuel Barclay Beckett was born in 1906 in Oxnard, Dublin, Ireland. He was a writer, a poet, a playwright, and a theater director. He is considered one of the most influential writers of the 20th century. He is oftentimes classified as either one of the last modernists or first postmodernists. He studied English, French, and Italian in the Trinity College in Dublin, and he actually did write in both English and French. As a young man, he became really close friends with another famous Irish writer, James Joyce. And his work is actually divided into 3 periods. We have early, middle, and late. This play, Waiting for Godot, was actually written during his middle period, where he purposely decided to distance himself from the influence of James Joyce. And because he actually came to the conclusion that literature should be subjective, and that he was going to write from what he called his inner reality. So something a lot of people know is that during his late work, his literature became very, very minimal. But even though Waiting for Godot was actually written during his middle period, you're gonna see, it's very, very minimal. It's really simple. He's very economical with the way he uses words, and And if you were just to skim the play really quickly, you would miss a lot of the subtleties he includes in his writings. So just a little bit about the play. So Waiting for Godot is actually considered one of the most significant English language plays of the 20th century by the Massachusetts Review. So it centers around two main characters. We have Vladimir, also known as Didi, and we have Estragon, known as Gogo. So these two men actually meet up at a tree, and they reveal that they're waiting for a man named Godot. Eventually they meet a man named Pozo and his slave named Lucky. So they interact a bit, and eventually Pozo and Lucky leave. Later, a messenger boy comes and tells them that Godot will not be able to meet them, but he'll meet them the following day, and then he leaves. So the two men actually decide that they're going to leave, but never actually do. So the next day, they actually meet Pozo and Lucky once again, and Pozo he completely denies and has no memory of meeting either one of the men. So eventually, again, he leaves with his slave Lucky. So then the messenger boy comes once again and tells him that Godot will not be able to meet them, but that he'll come the other day, and denies having met Vladimir before. So once again he leaves, and the men decide that they're going to leave, but once again they don't move. So right now, we're actually gonna act out the very first opening scene where we are first introduced to Estragon and Vladimir.
Glad to see you back. I thought you were gone forever.
Me too.
We'll have to celebrate this, but how? Get up until I admire you.
Not now. Not now.
Maybe want to inquire where Tiny spent the night?
In a ditch?
A ditch? Where?
Over there.
Didn't beat you?
Beat me? Certainly didn't beat me.
Same law as usual?
The same? I don't know.
To come to think of it, where would you be? You would be nothing but a heap of bones in the present minute. No doubt about it.
And what of it?
It's too much for one man. It's too much for one man. On the other hand, what's good of losing heart now? You should have thought about this millions of years ago, in the 90s.
Ugh, stop blathering and help me off with this bloody thing.
Hand in hand on top of the Eiffel Tower, we were respectable in those times. Now, they won't even let us up. What are you doing?
Trying to take off my boot. Has that never happened to you?
Boots must be taken off every day. I'm tired of telling you that. Why don't you ever listen to me?
Why don't you help me?
Sometimes I feel it all coming the same. Then I go all queer. How shall I say this? Relieved and at the same time appalled. Funny. Well,
Nothing.
show.
There's nothing to show.
Try and air it out a bit more.
I think I'll just air it out for a bit.
Wow. There's man all over for you, blaming his fault of his boots, of his feet. This is getting a lot of
Okay. So there you go. That was the first opening scene, and it was one that I thought was particularly interesting. I feel like at first glance, it's really almost hard to like see what they're even doing because it seems like they're doing nothing. And I guess I argue that this is the first introduction to the concept of nothing, which kind of resonates throughout the whole play. So if you guys heard, Vladimir said that he feels hope coming, and at first he's relieved, but then he's appalled because it's empty. Like his hat that he keeps checking, it's like there's something in it, but he can't put his finger on it. Or Estragon's boot. He knows that something's bothering him and it's something substantial, and yet there's nothing in it, and yet he still thinks it's at the root of his problem. And it's the same with Vladimir. He thinks he knows what's bothering him, but he can't tell. He can't tell what it is. He's just as clueless as Estragon in some ways. So the whole time Vladimir's trying to have an actual conversation with Estragon, he's just disinterested. He says, "Stop blathering on," even though he's trying to talk about like some things that actually matter. Estragon's there just like messing with his boot or whatever. So one of the things that I got from this was the media, or maybe society in general, is overly concerned with trivial matters, like a prized boxing match, for example, as opposed to something that we really should be worried about, like the government spying on us, or police brutality across the country, or something like climate change. So I guess my first question for the audience, and then we can just get into it, is do you guys think that we're really disinterested in things that actually matter? Like, are we too preoccupied with our boots as opposed to like real things? Yeah, in the back.
I don't know if this is like an actual, like, I guess you could say, symbol to the story, but the fact, you're paying attention to your boots, or you're paying attention to your hat, outside your own existence. And so we think that we talk about how we're always on social media, we kind of turn an eye, and it kind of goes back to, we can't know outside of our own existence, and that goes back to lowercase truth, which is what we've been talking about all semester, and just kind of wanted to make that point to give you like a little bit of a flip, that maybe it's us, maybe we don't have the mental faculties to be cognizant of someone else's existence.
Okay, I have one more point to make, and then we can get into the next one. So if you guys heard, like right when Vladimir came in, he asked Estragon where he's been, and he said he was sleeping in a ditch, and he said he was being beaten in a ditch, and then he said, like, who's beating you? Is it the same people? And Estragon's like, I don't know, I don't care. He doesn't even care who it is. So when I thought about that, the first thing I was reminded of was how a lot of oppressed people have practically given up, sometimes with respect to like corporations or public policy, that they don't even care to know who it is that's like screwing them over at this point. They just know like that they can't like afford this or things like that. But one last question to you guys is, do you think that we've gotten to the point of like giving up, or do people care that who it is that's oppressing them, or do you even think that we're oppressed at all? Like, do you guys think we're in trouble? Yeah.
I can go back to the word hope. They used hope a couple years back, and I can see nowadays where people are hopeless. Like, so much stuff is going on, so much negative stuff is going on, and you constantly see.
Or the second act of the play. And at this point, the two main characters have already been waiting for a day, waiting for Godot still, and they come across Pozo and his slave, and now they're at the moment. Vladimir is going to kind of have his monologue speaking of what's going on and what he's thinking about the situation that they're in.
Let us not waste our time in idle discourse. Let us do something while we have the chance. It is not in our everyday that we are needed, and not indeed personally needed, but some would fit the case equally, if not better. To all mankind they were addressed, the cries still ringing in our ears. But at this place, at this moment of time, we are mankind. Let us do something before it's too late. Let us represent worthily for the foul brood which a cruel fate consigned us. What do you say? The tiger bounds to the help of his conquerors without the least credit to our species, or else he slinks away into the depths of the thickets. But that is not the question. are blessed in this that we happen to know the answer. Yes, in this immense confusion, one thing alone is clear. We are waiting for Godot to come. Or for the night to fall. We have kept our appointment, and that's the end of that. We are not saints, but we have kept our appointment. How many people can boast as much?
Billions?
You think so?
I don't know.
You may be right. All I know is the hours are long under these conditions and constrain us to beguile them with proceedings which, how shall I say, which may at first seem reasonable until they become a habit. You may say to prevent our reason from foundering, no doubt, but has it not been straining in the night without end of the abyss? That's what I sometimes wonder. You follow my reasoning?
We're all born mad, and some remain so. Existentialism, being able to, or not being able rather, to be outside of your own self. It's really, he said, Vladimir said at one point that at this point, at this time, we are mankind. And it's kind of going back to that idea of not being able to be outside, they don't know what's going on around them besides what's going on in that present moment where they are.
These are college kids.
Okay, so this part was one of the ones that kind of encapsulates the whole feeling of the whole play. And some people interpret Godot as this godlike figure that they're waiting for. You know how some people just kind of the whole purpose, they're waiting for the rapture and things like that. This is kind of that idea and that notion. So for me, the way I interpret it was that Godot is this, if he's not a godlike figure, he's not this really authoritative figure. So you can take it either way, because although he's not present, he still kind of controls them in some cosmic way, because even though he's not here, they refuse to leave and they refuse to go anywhere. So he controls their entire actions and what they do and what they say and how they interact with one another. And personally, I thought that Godot was this godlike entity, because you can't see this, but earlier in the scene, the boy comes back. In the first scene, the boy comes and they ask him if he works for Godot, and he says yes, that he tends the goats. And they ask him, does Godot beat you? And he says no, but he beats my brother, the one that tends to the sheep. So I interpret it as this really Old Testament way of punishing one while rewarding the other. And
In this scene, we kind of see Estragon is fed up, and she doesn't want to be there anymore, and Vladimir's like, no, we have to wait, he's going to come. And so my question, I guess, is if Estragon is so fed up with waiting, and they've been waiting for a day, why is he still there? And the response I can come up with is William James' A Will to Believe. And that is that some part of Estragon, however small that it is, believes that Godot is going to come. And William James explains it as for both of them, and a lot of people will argue that Estragon doesn't believe Godot is going to come. But I have to believe that he does, because he still waits. And this goes back to existentialism in free will. Everything we do, we have a choice in. And it's whether or not we're going to take responsibility for our choices. So, in my opinion, I believe very deep down inside, Estragon believes Godot is going to show up. Because for him, it's what William James calls a live hypothesis, something that he cannot ignore and that will be monumental if it were to come true. So my question, I guess, to the audience, what do you guys think? Why is Estragon still waiting if he doesn't want to be there?
In the back.
I think
Anyway, going back to how Vladimir and Estragon are so different. In the first scene, Vladimir, he's like, oh, you're in a ditch. She's like, you'd be nothing more than a heap of bones if it wasn't for me. But he's practically already there. So I kind of feel like, to answer your question, Rebecca, why he's still staying, I feel like he's kind of addicted to the waiting, or he can't even go on his own, because he just won't make it. So I guess I'm just looking at things from a socioeconomic lens, but I kind of feel like that's our position too, again, or going back to the people that are oppressed, they don't want to like make a fuss or like rock the boat because like yeah, they're making minimum wage and like their life kind of sucks, but still like their children are fed, so that's like enough for them, even though they have like, you know, their lives aren't optimal, it's still like just enough to like make them stay.
Okay, so another thing that we talked about was we kind of examined this way from like an anthropological point of view. Is what we came to conclude was that this kind of also served as a metaphor for religion, because like we talked about, you know, rituals and things we do to keep ourselves occupied. Sometimes we do that, like religion is in itself what part of one of those cyclical like ritual that you do, because you know, you let it kind of, you develop this like ritual of like this habit of doing something every single day, which is essentially kind of what religion does. And it's something that they do, like they actively try to find an excuse or try to justify why they're hanging out by this tree. So he's like, okay, what are we doing? Well, we can do all of these things, but right now we're just gonna wait for Godot. So they know that there is like this great world out there, and the possibilities are endless, but they're just gonna sit here and wait, and that's their way of justifying staying there. And that's kind of also what the booths kind of represent, like, oh, they're just, you know, fiddling with this booth, and no, this is important, I have to do this, and that's just kind of how they fill their lives. And just the plot of this whole story goes in, it's like cyclical, and everything happens over and over and over again, kind of how like, you know, you would practice a religion, which also served as a way to control and have authoritative power over people, and that's kind of what Godot does. Even though he's not there, he's not present, but he controls their lives, because if he didn't, they would have left. And he talks about like, oh, so many people can't keep their appointment, how many do you think have, you know, done what we've done? And she's like, I don't know, billions. And you know, sometimes people, we think like, oh, we're so special, and you know, we're unique, and I'm my own person, and we're very, you know, we kind of feed our own egos, but it's like at the end of the day, like, you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. Like, no matter how much you try to justify and try to find meaning in your own life, the reality of it is you're not that much more different than anybody else. You're just looking for things to occupy yourself and make yourself feel satisfied.
And then again, just going back to the rituals and what we do like every day to like preoccupy our time, the first line that Vladimir said when he came out here was, let us not waste our time in idle discourse, but that's exactly what they did, and that's exactly what they continue to do. They just waited for Godot, and like they're just waiting, and like the days are blurring, they don't even know how long they've been there anymore, they don't know who's beating them, they're just waiting, even though they said, no, let's not do this, let's actually like do some action, they're just still there.
And kind of going back to the idea of nothingness, which really is a lot of what the play is about, there's really nothing substantial going on. And going back and referring to what Betsy was mentioning about religion and being like that, really thinking about that is there's this place about nothing, and they're kind of trying to get something of substance, waiting for someone who might be really important. And it's okay. It's kind of just going back to the whole wanting something, whether anything is important, is this really about nothing? And really, is the person they're waiting for just some God figure, or is it a real person? And having hope in that person possibly showing up. And basically just everything that Betsy mentioned earlier.
Does anyone have any thoughts on this, or anything you want to add to or comment on, ask anything?
Do you guys agree with Betsy that we kind of fill our lives with like cyclical rituals? Because I kind of do. I feel like, sorry, I'll Betsy real quick, but I kind of feel like I like fill my life with just these little things. And it's funny because they made a joke on like Cartoon Network, and they're like, let's do something scary. And they're like, all right, how about we just like sit alone with our thoughts? And that's kind of scary because like you're like faced with your own morality. So like that may be like one of the reasons why like I'm over here just like involved in like doing all kinds of things, because maybe if I like sit down and actually think about, I don't know, my life in an existential way, I'll get like freaked out. Yeah.
I would have to agree that we do things a lot, like the same thing over and over and over again, because, I mean, you wake up, you brush your teeth, you go to
All you do is watch games nonstop. Well, that in itself is like your version of like religion, and that's what you fill your life with. So just because you're not part of, you know, organized religion, and I'm not bashing on it in any way, shape, or form, but just because you're not a part of it doesn't mean you're free of like this cycle and like this, you know, idea of letting something completely take over your life.
True.
hang on to my legs.
Who the heck am I?
True.
Sure, all the same. You might do it at a pinch, but is it that strong enough?
Supposed to see.
It's not worth it, Paris.
And you say you have to come back tomorrow?
Yeah. Yes.
Dee Dee,
Yes?
I can't go on like this.
That's what she thinks.
If we parted, that might be better for us.
Perhaps. We'll have to hang ourselves tomorrow, unless Godot comes.
And if he comes?
We'll be safe.
Believe that Godot is going to come. But ultimately, and this is why I believe that humans have free will, going back to the free will question, because they pondered leaving, but ultimately they made the choice to stay. And kind of another, we talked about how this is an absurdist play, and in existentialism, when you're talking about the absurd, it is that life just cannot be explained. And so what makes it heroic is to confront the absurdity of life and continue with no chance of success as we see them waiting at the very end, still waiting for Godot, knowing that he's most likely never going to show up. But that's what the play is about. It's about confronting the absurdity of life, and I think we really see it in this scene.
So, that's my religion. Okay, was that, they really go against what transcendentalists believe, which was that they thought, religion was corrupted, and that you should, kind of get away from all that and be your own person, be really self-reliant, and be your own source of authority, which they didn't necessarily mean go do whatever you want. They meant like you should just kind of be assertive in your own way. And these characters are the exact opposite of that, because not only do they rely on, this notion of Godot, but they rely on one another a lot. And you might notice Astronaut or Gogo is really, really has attachment issues, and he can't be away from Dee Dee for too long, and they bicker a lot, but at the end of the day, they need each other and they find comfort in each other, and they don't, necessarily want to leave that. And they also talked about, being saved, which was my kind of idea of redemption, being redeemed by Godot when he comes. And I honestly believe that the reason that they wait so long is because that maybe Dee Dee actually thinks that this might be a test of will and faith, and that's why he needs to stay, because what if he leaves and Godot comes, then what happens? Is he going to be punished, or is he going to be damned, or whatever is going to happen? So, yeah.
Sure, okay. So this play is interesting in the fact that it's called an absurdist play, which is right between a tragedy and a comedy. And it's it really is funny. Some of the scenes are really funny, but then it's really sad. It's wow, they're I don't know, hurting themselves or something. There's a scene where Pozo's slave comes, and then the whole time they're just capping on the slave, and they're just not even giving him the time of day, but he's super intelligent or whatever. So it's kind of weird. I kind of feel like they don't even know what's going on the whole time, and it's exhibited when they say that they want to hang themselves. Because they just they don't even know if they should wait for Godot or if they should just end it or whatever. So I kind of feel like they've lost their way, they don't even have direction at this point. So I guess I'm questioning, not the will to believe, but just will in general. Was it really in their power to leave, or was it just impossible from the start? You see people with mental disorders or something, and they'll commit a crime, and they'll say, oh, they did it on their own free will. But I question, did they really? I feel like maybe it wasn't even in their power to not do something. I don't know, maybe because they get, a joy out of doing this, so, it was never really in their power to do that. So I kind of feel like they might even be biologically programmed to, cling on to maybe, some sort of false hope or to each other.
And to kind of add to what he talked about, they contemplate life, and they're kind of trying to find this meaning, like what Rebecca said, they're trying to find meaning in all of this, money yourself, or maybe he'll save them or do whatever it is that they need from him. Does anyone have any thoughts or want to add anything to this? Then we talk about people hanging themselves. Do you guys think that, you know, we are limited to the things that we can do on our own free will?
I'm just gonna argue when you guys maybe that I'm taking the existential view of this play, but and my favorite thing that existentialists say is that we're condemned to be free. That maybe we are being guided by that, by an authority, and even William James talks about how that influences our will to believe in something is external, the law and all that. But in and of itself, we make our own choices. They make their choice, and whether we can go round and round. There's always going to be logical problems with everything. But then this goes back to existentialism, which is what it is. It's absurd. We are sitting here giving you meaning to this play when really the meaning of this play is that life is absurd and you really cannot explain it at all. So, any thoughts? Purpose, and we're talking about how they're being they're there because they're waiting for Godot, and that's kind of their guiding force, is this Godot figure. Maybe for them that is their purpose, to wait for Godot, and that's how they're defining themselves, by waiting. Like, that is their purpose. And this is why I believe that it is free will, because we define who we are, and that's the only thing that we can do. Through the existential scope of life, the only thing we can do is define ourselves. It's the only thing we can do constantly. And so for them, their purpose is waiting for Godot. And that's, to me, why I think it's free will.
Okay. I guess what I was trying to say earlier, that we might not have free will is because, like, what if someone were to come up to me and be like, well, yeah, you're, like, free to, like, date men or like men or whatever. And I'm like, well, not really. Like, it's never occurred to me. Like, I don't really like men, so am I really free? Or, like, are you really free to do something that's, like, never occurred to you? Like, I don't know, like, what if you're thirsty and you, like, drink water and they're like, oh, yeah, you were free to drink, like, a cranberry Arnold Palmer lemonade thing. You're like, well, that never occurred to me at all. So, like, was it really that I really have the choice to do that?
Yeah, because you made the choice not to do it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, okay, I'm sorry to pick you up. Okay, but I'm going to argue that we don't have free will, because essentially who you are as a person, it all depends on, your experiences growing up, society, and how you interpret things around you. So you're essentially limited to the things you've already experienced and how you interpret them. So because you're limited to that, you can't experience other people's reality, so you're only limited to your own reality. And so you can't do things maybe other people thought that they can do. Like he said, like, you can think like, oh, I could have done one thing or the other, but if it doesn't occur to you, then you can't necessarily do it. And you are limited to experience the world only as yourself. You can't experience it as anybody else or experience anybody else's reality, because we talked about this. Everybody has their own version of their own reality and what they believe is the truth with a capital T. So if you believe something's, the absolute truth based on your experiences growing up and your surroundings, you're going to be limited to that, and that's it. And you're not free to, reach out outside of that.
Well, I'm going to argue that you are, because you're trying to put your reality onto other people, like, oh, we can't. That's the point of existentialism. You cannot experience something outside of your own existence. But that does not necessarily mean that you are not free. Just because something isn't what William James calls like a live hypothesis for you, doesn't mean that it's not for somebody else. And he makes the point by saying, if I told you, be a theosophist, and you're like, I don't know what that is, you don't know. But that doesn't mean you don't have free will. And I think that's maybe what I'm getting at, is like, you have free will to make your own choices, and that's what free will comes down to people making their own choices, whether you choose to like men or not, or you don't. That's what I believe. That's what I see. Like, that's what I get from this play, is the existential view that it's all about choice.
By Hard Play. It's a poem by Thomas Keating. It says that silence is the language of the god or gods, and language is but just gibberish. And that's it.
I guess, no, that, like, coincides things, but like they weren't really saying anything. All right, so we probably have time for like one or two more questions from the audience with like any comments or anything.
Stop doing it while you're doing it too. It may not be waiting for someone, it may be you're always on your phone. And I think that's just like it's part of life. You kind of can't give, I don't know, I don't give him advice because I'm too busy in my own world to care about what he's doing. Be like, oh yeah, maybe you shouldn't be waiting anymore.
Yeah, and no matter how much you would tell either of the two characters, they wouldn't know what to do with their lives. Like you could say, oh, Lester Gardner needs to be independent, but he's spent his whole life just listening to Vladimir go on and on about, his theories, whatever, and he's just like let himself get dragged along. And, once you've done that your entire life, it's extremely difficult to even try to do something else, even if you think about it. Just like, I could do this, but then again, I'm so comfortable doing what I've always done, so I might as well just stay here.
I would just tell him to go too, because he's always, if you keep reading, it's a pretty short play, and it's just constantly like, okay, it was coming, hold up, and then it's just like, wait, is he really? So I just be like, just go. But yeah, that's basically it.
Well, I guess in a way it's kind of like talking to your growth cycle, and like first you have to find like what your cycle is and identify what like your problem is or isn't, and then kind of figure out what you want to do with your life. So like I don't know, I think just let them hang out. It's cool.
Yeah, like you don't even know when you are in the
Yeah, because I'd be a hypocrite. I would be like, oh,
Yeah.
get out of there, independent, but like
everybody has their own cycle.
Yeah.
You wake up, you go to school, you go to work. Like, how can you just like, you don't even know you're in the cycle. How can you break it?
Yeah.
And that's our show, folks. Thanks for coming.
No, I keep saying I'll shut up. When I was in college, as an undergraduate, I read this play. I had one perspective. Now I look at it, and it's almost a comedy to me. It's almost humorous. I know it's absurd, but to me it's almost funny. It's like, what do you mean? What are you waiting for? It's a cautionary tale of you don't have to live your life like this. But you have to answer those very simple, fundamental, essential questions about what makes you tick, and then get moving, Thank you for coming.
Hi, so we're Sigma Kappa Delta today. We presented a literary analysis on Waiting for Godot. It's a play about these two characters, Vladimir and Estragon, and they're waiting for this shadowy figure called Godot who never comes at the end. So it's kind of existentialist. It's almost about nothing in the sense that they're talking, but they're not really saying anything. So do you guys have anything to say about your characters?
Estragon is just a character who simply just lets himself drag along Vladimir, whatever Vladimir says pretty much goes. He sometimes suggests things, but it never really goes through because even though they're both waiting for Godot, it seems like Vladimir has most of the control in the situation. So Estragon, the character that I did some parts in the played out, he was just, along for the ride pretty much and just, yeah.
And yeah, basically in Vladimir's part, he was just the bossy, controlling person, the know-it-all in the play, and yeah.
But also, I feel like between the two, he was more of the contemplative one. He actually had things to say of substance, but Estragon, in a sense, didn't even care. So Vladimir's over here talking about not wasting time talking and actually going and doing things, and Estragon's just I don't know, dealing with his boot or something that doesn't really matter. So we kind of talked about people. Our society today, being preoccupied with boxing matches or MySpace or Facebook or whatever, things that don't even matter when there's so much to there's so much things going on in our world that we actually should be talking about.
For my side, I kind of went for the existential part. I'm a philosophy major, so that's kind of where I felt at home. And this idea that life is absurd, you really can't explain what it is. People ask you all the time, what's the meaning of life? And you can get many different answers from, your meaning of life is to die, or it depends on who you are. And that's kind of what I took away from it. With Vladimir and Estragon, you kind of see these two, I guess, friends, almost like siblings, and you know, they're kind of trying to make sense of why they're waiting and trying to find their purpose of their life. And that's kind of what I enjoyed about this.
I guess just to wrap it up, we talked about, so they're here waiting this whole time, and we talked about if they even have like the choice to wait, free will, and some of us argue that yeah, you do have the choice, and then others argue that you don't really have the choice. It's kind of like biologically programmed almost to be attached to this like Vladimir or Estragon or what have you.
So what I took from this play was, like Rebecca said, it's really existential, and I think it mostly focuses, like the play's really cyclical, and it mostly focuses on like the rituals that we do to kind of fulfill our lives and find meanings in it, and just kind of, you know, justify a lot of things that we do. So that's what I got from that.
And that's our show, folks.